I grew up in a small town that doesn't exist anymore, it doesn't have a population anymore. But they had a one-room schoolhouse and all 12 grades were in the same room. But when I would go to cities and stuff, I loved libraries and I loved museums. I loved not just the literature and the artwork, but the feeling of walking into a museum, the quietness, usually. In the military, I got stationed in Europe. And for over 5 years, I was in Madrid.
Ooh, you must
They have a great museum there called the Prado, and Spanish art and so on. And I took a art appreciation class, which involved working with oils a little bit. And then the history of art in Spain, in the University of Madrid. So my love was automatic. I was a jazz musician when I was a young guy, and painters liked coming and listening to the performances. I think they liked the interaction and the creativity, even if they didn't hear every note or see everything. An artist that I have a great deal of respect for, Thomas Quinn. I went to him, Lanford Monroe had passed away in 2000, 1950. We'll look at some of her artwork. But she's a young artist that's got an identity immediately. I can recognize her work 50 feet away, surrounded by many other artworks. And just say she works in oil, they would all be oil, and the same size and so on. I'd recognize it just like that. And she doesn't have a gimmick. But it's the subtlety, the tones, the color, the light, and so on. And when she passed away, I went to two people. Bob Kuhn, who had grown up with her parents, and talked to him how much she appreciated his artwork. Bob Kuhn quietly put his head down and says, he knew her parents very well. They were both artists. It was in East Coast at the time. And he said, they called me one day and wanted me to let a fox go. There was an injured fox. They had kept Lanford growing attached to it. And so he came and they said, would you let him go? Because Lanford's really attached and she'll get very angry at us. It's all right to get angry. Parents are so courageous, aren't they? So he puts in the back of his little vehicle, looks around, they don't see Lanford. Oh, good, she doesn't notice what we're doing. He goes to the driver's side of the car and she's sitting in the passenger seat. Just sitting there waiting for him. You know. He drives out, maybe, he said it was about 45-minute drive or so, because he wanted it in a very rural area where the animal could freely get out and go into the wild. And when you open the front, when you have a wild animal in captivity, many times they just don't take off. They're very careful how they get out. They stop, they look around, creep a little bit more, and then boom, take off. And this is how the fox left. He said, I don't think Lanford ever forgave me. Now, of course she did, because the two artists that she looked at the most, in addition, living artists, in addition to Carl Rungus, when she would go into the museum and go through. One of the lucky things I've had is a docent, particularly during Western Visions, almost anywhere, is when artists go through the galleries. If I am available and I'm an opportunity and so on, they'll say what's hanging, what's going, and so on. Then I listen to them. And they like to share. And I very seldom ever ask a question. I just let them talk. what do you see in this, you know, and that type of a thing, then let them talk freely. And I picked up a lot of things from Bob Kuhn, Ken Carlson, Lanford Monroe, and so many others, you know, just by quietly going along. And Bob Kuhn was great at sharing. So I told him, I said, she loved your foxes. And the three artists that she really looked at was Carl Rungus, and she'd look at every corner and then work towards the center, start all the way around the edge of the painting. And I said, she loved your foxes. And that's when he said, I don't think she did that. She adored me, you know. The other one was Thomas Quinn. And Thomas Quinn, when I told him this, he's a person that don't share a lot, and he's got a painting right now in the King Gallery, and I'd ask you to really take a look at it. He's a watercolorist. And when artists that paint in watercolor look at his paintings, I'm very good artist, professional artist. You can almost see the knees shaking, you know, because he's so good. And he's doing what artists want to reach for, you know. And so he looks at me, and he's a tall gentleman, good-sized man. He looks down and he says, you know, when I'm doing something, and I'm wondering who's going to see this, because artists a lot of times paint for themselves and sometimes for each other. And many times we don't see the subtleties of what they're doing from a development standpoint. And he says, when I wonder who sees this, I think of Lanford, which is a great statement. Being a jazz musician, I understand we play chamber music in small groups, and we interact. And a lot of times we know the audience isn't hearing what we're doing. You know, they're listening, and maybe they're looking and so on, but they don't hear some of the things. And artists, the same thing. When they're painting certain things, they'll do something very special that's pronounced or so on. And the average person will walk right by, look, glance at it, and walk on, and never see it. But that is just a supreme compliment from one artist to another. I'd like us to go out, and we're going to turn to the left here, and we'll take a look at Gerald Bossier first for a moment, and show the development contest of making a bronze. And then that exhibit right now is very special because he's got another artwork right next to it. The mantelpiece, like the moose in the lobby or so on, they'll do them in sections. The head, the shoulder, the other shoulder, and so on. You don't do them all in one piece because that's the way it's going to be put together ultimately as a bronze. This was originally a marble piece right here, and it was a bit larger. But it was popular, and people really liked it. And this gentleman, he loves doing his artwork, but he has to pay bills, something to eat, where to live. So bronze allows him to get that type of income because marble is one, and that's it. And many times they become something that person has a very large home or a museum, you know, unless they're smaller. So you see the process going through, and if you had, remember when you were in, just before you went into high school, and then the early part of high school, the Bronze Age. This is the first metal that we worked with. And so when you share that with the average person that you're going to be talking to, they identify immediately with this is a metal, and this was an era of development of the human species. You don't see the patina, but you see the process all the way across. The patina is where they put different gases. He gives it a marble effect, even though it's a bronze, but you can see. What is special about this is right behind you. That is Gerald Bossier. Isn't that beautiful?
It's beautiful.
you're allowed some whoops in this process. If there's a whoops with marble and this natural fabric,
You mean
it's
like whoop?
a mistake.
Oh, yeah, okay. What? Technical.
It's gonna be either a different sculpture or no sculpture at all, where they can correct the process in working with bronze.
So this is one piece
That's one piece.
that has
Yes.
been, did they do the clay first, like this? They
He
started
would
out-
probably he says he uses sketches a little bit. He doesn't use his sketches to share with the public and so on, but he does a sketch, and then he'll sometimes do something in clay, yes, as a model. But many times when they look at the wood, Michelangelo had a great statement. He looked at the stone and he visualized what the image was within it.
Is this
So it's a-
chipped? I mean, like with a chisel and a
Yes,
hammer or
yes,
something?
they
It's
do
so
have
smooth.
tools now where they didn't have years ago. Everything was done by hand.
To make it smooth? Or,
The smoothness part is something that he would use, and that would be by hand. And then he would use the polishing effort that you would do to really hand. What's nice about him, and you're going to take a look at a granite piece a little bit later, and I encourage you, listening to that presentation on tape that's right next to it, Silent Messenger, because you'll see the natural stone, and then you'll see it when it's been chipped all the way down. Some of it, you'll see his workmanship, very similar to this. And then at the end, except for that medium is a bit harder than the marble is. What is special about it, he celebrates nature, he loves doing it in nature, and this is a natural element of our, we've got a good presentation of white marble also right next to the front desk. That's Gerald Bossier's. Anybody know what species that sculpture is by the front desk? It's been sitting there.
bear? No, I'm just guessing.
What animal?
Bear?
Bear? No.
Is it otters?
Otters.
Oh.
Very good. See, we're docents and we miss things. Douglas Allen, I like this man a lot. And he's one of those people that will share a great deal. It's an evening scene. And evening scenes are not easy, but other artists will really pay attention to an artist that does evening scenes. And he's got a nice little statement here, but Remington did a series of evening scenes, and that inspired him to start working and doing evening scenes. We got a painting right here, Lanford Monroe. It's tight right here, so her work, like any artist, and I'm going to select a painting to do that with, where I'm going to have you look up close and look at the workmanship of the artist, and then get back and give it distance and give it angles. And what I'll do when I'm giving a tour is I'll select a painting. Usually it's a Carl Rungus. And then I'll have that group or those individuals look at the painting close. See the workmanship, see the strokes, see the subtleties, and then give it distance and give it angles. And you'll see a different painting at every distance and at every angle with a very mature artwork. And it's a joy to do that. It really is. This is hers right here, and you can walk right into this painting. It is difficult. You'd have to give a little distance, and some of you that over there where the Gerald Bossier piece is, when you look at this, you can see it in a different type of dimension and different type of depth. Her animals are living. And as a young artist, many times she would paint them, but they were vibrant. Some paintings that we have in our collection included, they're still life. They're not meant to be still life, but the animal doesn't have that inside feeling of living. This does, definitely. The animals, even though they're not running or they're not walking, they either just came to the stop or they're just getting ready to move. And they're observing each other. And wildlife, it's very important. A moose is, I'm going to do a little bit of things about nature also. A moose can be very anxious if you surprise it. And they can charge. They have poor eyesight. So does a grizzly bear, a mature grizzly bear. And so when they look at you, they don't necessarily see you. So your voice and your presence and not alarming them and not surprising them helps a great deal. And it will then lower the expectations of having an animal that maybe is not going to be too happy with you. And if they know you're there and they recognize, and you can say anything you want as long as you do it calmly, but you can make up anything you want and talk to them. They don't care, but they do pick up the feelings.
Do they usually, is this like photographs and then they go back home and paint it, or?
She would find an environment that she would really like. And then either she's seen animals in this scene or so on, or she would do that. She would probably sketch it out. I know that because I knew her pretty well. She would sketch it, and then she would wait at a different time. She may have some photographs of different animals, but really she's going to be using her understanding and knowledge of the animal so they can paint it. Again, if I go to another one, I did Michelangelo on sculpture. Leonardo da Vinci liked to paint the human figure from the inside out, not from the outside in. And then he wanted to have an understanding of the muscle structure, the shoulders, everything, so he could give them real definition, not just visual definition, but to paint that animal as they're living.
Is this one painting or two?
It's two, but she put them together in
Well,
usually.
so presumably,
Mhm.
I would think that she had to actually paint them at the same time, side by side, in order to get the coloring to kind of match. Because if you did them at different points in time, I would think just getting your paint exactly the right color would be challenging.
I don't know.
I think they were always
Process.
intended to be seen side by
Yeah.
side like that, and they
Yeah.
were created at the same time. I don't think they were ever envisioned as two separate pieces.
Yeah. Don't know though, there's been some discussion by other artists if she painted these to be together, but if she was going to put them in the same frame. That's a decision the artist could make as they're doing the work. You know, they don't make up their mind many times initially. You know, as they're creating an artwork, they'll decide certain things. They'll decide a frame afterwards. They'll decide how to present it and so on. Lamford was 50 when she passed, and she was so creative and just vibrant, full of energy. She was the artist in residence the year before she passed. And then she did a presentation in Western Visions to all the artists and the visitors and so on in our auditorium. And she had butterflies all over the place, nervousness, you know. And I didn't help because she's down as artist in resident. She's in the lobby and she's painting, and she's going to do a presentation a little bit later that day. And I'm saying, oh, Ken Carlson just came through the front door. Just on doing the footsteps. You know, and I would mention different noted artists that she really liked, you know. And where?
You know, but I think that probably helped a little bit into relaxing because
But when you're presenting something to all your peers, that's just different. You know, it really is, particularly when so many of them she admired a great deal. It's come.
Did he do the base first to get the natural?
He had, again, because it's stone, he had a visualization exactly what he was going to be doing. And when you take a look at the other piece of the otters, he likes to do that in a very similar aspect to it. And he'll build on the base.
Is that two pieces or one?
One.
Oh, so the base
But the base
not
is
a separate
separate.
piece.
No, no,
Oh,
No?
Okay. Oh,
that's part of the sculpture.
it's even more impressive.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Come this way.
How much it would cost just even buying that chunk.
Thomas Quinn right here. It's hard to say. We many times will not have Thomas Quinn for exhibit because it's a painting in watercolor and they can only be up about every 3 years for only 3 or 4 months at a time. So they can't, like an oil and so on, put them out and then just leave them out. But he's someone that you can really get up close and take a look at the artwork, see the Oriental influence. I spent a good period of time in Japan and so on, and you can see some of the Japanese influences that he uses in watercolor. His definition, again, animal that's alive, and he has got an excellent statement here, and he doesn't talk a lot about himself. So it's a very good statement dealing with an animal. He actually watched a bird in its movement, and he used that observation to capture this animal here. Again, a living animal. And given it distance and given it angles, and you'll see different perspectives of that artwork.
So if you have a watercolor at home, you really shouldn't leave it up all the time then? I don't have any
No,
now,
no,
I've got
you
it down.
put it in an area that doesn't have a lot of, don't have natural light on it, for sure. And if you do have a light, maybe have it where it's not on it all the time or not on all the time. And don't give it an enormous amount of exposure. Because they can age. Yeah. So of course, we want generations in the future
So when this Thomas
seeing
Quinn
our great artwork.
is taken down, how long will it be back in storage before it's put up again? Is there
About 3 years.
Oh, 3 years?
And the registrar, Emily, many times will keep. The curator might say, I want to put up watercolor Thomas Quinn or something like that. And she'll know when it was last exhibited and how long it was out. She keeps records of that, where it's located, how it's taken care of, and how much exposure it's had. We have a Native American right there, John Nieto. He's Apache. And that animal is alive. Do you see that? What kind of animal is it?
Coyote?
Coyote. And coyotes are tentative. They look almost cowardly, and they're not. But they're very tentative, and they're a bit, I would say, nervous, you know. And he captures that, if you notice. If a domestic dog that was much larger than them came running at them, they would run. If that dog was gaining on them, they would lay down and turn over on its back. And that dog get over the top of him, that domestic dog, we have a real problem because they go right straight for the throat. So they look timid and docile, but that's a hunter. And the only other animals they don't mess with at all is the wolf. The wolf is not tolerant of a coyote because they have to protect their dens and their pups. So,
They're not only
and they will chase
hunters,
them down, and they will do a job.
they're as much hunted as they are hunters.
Yes, but they're very good at living solitary, don't have to live in packs like the wolves and so on, even though they have family groups and raise their young and so on. And they're very good at surviving. And so you see them in states that wolves could not exist. Like coyotes live in Oklahoma, and they live in Texas, and they live in certain states. You couldn't sustain wolf packs in Texas. They shoot them as soon as they want to do it in our state.
They are rampant in the South too. They live in Georgia and North Carolina.
Oh, yes, they live, yeah, and they
All
live
kinds of
in
urban areas.
almost cosmopolitan areas. They survive.
Atlanta,
They're very adaptable, and
get the cats.
and if there's a high risk factor for them and humans, they'll do most of their activity at night. They're very adaptable. Much more than wolves, because wolves, it's that family unit with the alpha male, the alpha female, and so on. They're very structured. And you can break that structure, that family distinction. That's what makes the wolf so endearing when they're a member of your family. You know, except for the dog. The cousin of a wolf. Robert Bateman, we'll look at other paintings right there as we go. You can select a painting like this. I would select one if I'm doing the tour. Usually it'll be the one at the entrance to the main galleries, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. Because this allows the person to look at this view and then go outside and actually look at the image. And if it's in the winter time, then you've got the Sheep Mountain, which is the sleeping Indian. And this is the image right close to town. Your turnout right down there. Natural element again. See the natural wood right here? Mr. Osborne. And then the sculpture here. He's dynamic. We've got a swan sculpture by him on wood. And he takes the natural element and he does, Steve Kestrel takes the natural element of his stone and then he makes a sculpture. Donna Hal Sickles. If she has a sculpture up, she has a painting up, enjoy that. And it is fun to watch young women when they see her images, because they kind of sit up. You know, she just gives them a feeling, you know, they'll bounce up. And we've got a couple of them where she's got the woman in motion with wildlife and so on, with nature. And I've shared that with Donna Hal Sickles, you know, and she enjoys that feedback. Catherine Mapes Turner, the Trio Gallery that's just north of town, on the right side going into town. You will see her work. Her gallery is there.
She just posted.
And there's a different name. It's not called Trio anymore. I forgot.
Turner Fine Art.
Turner. Yeah.
She just posted either yesterday or today on Facebook her top paintings of 2018. Just posted.
This painting got a cover on one of the art publications. Very live, very emotional. She's an artist that's pushing the envelope all the time. All the time. Wanting to develop, wanting to create. Doesn't rest too much on what she was doing last year. She's pushing it. Come this way. Randall Dutra. I see people walk by here all the time and don't see the cougar. We've got a few people on the staff that said, and that cougar's just waiting to get out. Where's the cougar? They maybe walked by here 20 times, 50 times, they're not seen. And it's a good example, first of all, of the artwork, but then taking a good look at this, of how animals can blend in at times. Is that a big boulder or is that a bear? And if it never moves, then it's a boulder. If it moves, it's a bear.
Was that done when the Cougars were here several years ago, or 1998? Yeah.
Yes. You got, very good, you can do that. You can look right here. You see this is 1999? Right here. That's when we got this painting. And then they'll have usually the date of the artwork itself. Usually. But you'll be able to look at that. So when you're going through and looking these paintings and say, I'm going to use this one with my next tour, I'm going to do that. That's information you can take a look at, and that's a good information for you, not necessarily to share with the visitor, but it gives you an understanding. And then if you get a question, you can respond to that. You can just look at it and respond to it. This location, Tucker Smith, we're going to look at one other painting later of Tucker. This location on the south entrance into Yellowstone is about 1.5 miles to 2 miles from the entrance. And there's a little turnout when you go over this small bridge. And it's a walk of about 2 or 3 minutes. And you can walk down and look at these falls. Until I got to the age of 65, I jump off these rocks. And I stopped doing it. Not because I'm matured. I've got better sense. But it's a very deep hole. It's very, very deep and safe. I've never met one of these guys down there though. That's nice. And he talks about a good explanation. Do read these. This is something that Adam and his staff has really developed, and they try to capture the statements and the visualization of the art. And he saw this light here just come through. You got and if the sun was at the right space and you could see the light that goes across. It's something he actually saw, didn't just invent it. And many of our artists do that. They're inspired for what they're observing in the natural world. And you could walk right along here and get back from the falls. If you don't want to jump, you could go there and then go into the water underneath the falls. It's a nice deep hole. The water is refreshing. Very refreshing. This sculpture of this bird, the Gur Falcon, with Ross Madison, was done in our lobby. And he did a lot of it. One night he worked all night on this sculpture. He was doing an owl, he had a live owl, and they had this Gur Falcon. The Skura Falcon, when I look at it, I have a different feeling because he allowed me, put a big glove on my hand, took him out to exercise him outside the building. And I got to put the glove on my hand and let him launch off. He circled all the way around, down or south of our parking lot, all the way around, did that 4 or 5 times, and then came. The ravens tried to keep up with it, and all it would do is just close its wings, just jettison. Just amazing dynamics. Came around and he says, okay, you'll put out your hand. I put my hand out like this. And that bird comes and he's getting about from here to where Jane is at. And that bird is just moving. I mean, going, really going. Easily over 100. And it goes just like that. My hand, like I barely even touched it. It didn't have any weight at all. It's very light, and just sat very, very lightly. It was, and it, when he slowed down and he turned his wings like this, he just almost stopped in midair, and then and he was going so fast, a split second just before that. It just was amazing, the control and the fact that he's a falconer, his artist. So his relationship with that bird is multi-dimensional. And as an artist it is. In the way, again, I love that. This is our animal in residence, Nancy Glacier. And they'll be out in, oh geez.
March.
End of April many times, if the weather permits. The first sighting, usually towards the end of April. March is pretty early for us. They come out early. When I'm up high, say 10,000 feet, 11,000 feet, they'll be in those locations too, but they'll come out much later in the year because the weather is there. But they come out here early, and then about August, they go in and turn in. And
So this is different from a marmot.
this is a moment.
It's a marmot.
The rock chuck is just another name.
It's just,
People
yeah.
call them.
Oh, really? I've never seen
And it's what do they do on the East Coast? And they see the shadow.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever.
Groundhog.
Punxsutawney Phil?
This is
It's the same thing.
they're related.
So they're really, right, not the
Yeah.
exact same.
This one is adapted to our climate, like those
Groundhog. Is it like a
Groundhog.
groundhog?
groundhog. Yeah. And there are groundhog, Rocky Mountain groundhog. And we've got them. The population is starting to build up again. It's a hazardous area because they're not real fast and they like to get on the asphalt because asphalt is worn. But vehicles are dangerous.
That's why that caution sign as you're driving up Marmot
Yeah.
Crossing,
Yeah.
to get people to slow down.
So if you're in the summer and so on, you just ask the visitors to look out towards the entrance, the big boulder rocks and stuff like that. Many of them will see if this painting happens to be up.
You said they go in August, you mean they hibernate?
What's that?
You said they go in August?
They do.
Yes,
They
yes,
hibernate?
yes.
So,
So the ones that are higher elevations, they'll go in many times. I've seen them out at the end of September and October. But ours are in by August. Yeah, usually early August.
and then when do they stop hibernating?
When they,
April
the end
usually?
of, I'd say, end of April,
Oh, wow.
May. Early May, end of April.
It probably depends on, again, on the elevation.
And then they eat, the body weight's important. Nature has got certain rules for us because we have so many, our brain and our development and so on, but they have to get a certain body weight before they can be impregnated and give birth.
Are these,
A bear has to do the same thing. The animals have to have a certain body weight. And so that you see them feeding perpetually once they're awake.
are these the same as those little ground squirrels?
No, no, those are
different.
chiselers. Yeah.
Chiselers.
Are you into ground squirrels?
What?
Or actually you into ground squirrels?
Yeah.
We call
Do they give birth in
Yeah,
their,
the
in their
chiselers.
hibernation?
Is it-
Do they give birth during their hibernation?
What's that?
Do they give birth during their hibernation?
Yes. Yeah, right at the end.
Oh, okay.
And then you see the little ones come out.
Yeah, we do around here, we see the babies come
And
out.
we really
It's
want
pretty
to
cool.
keep him off the roads as much as scat. I'll walk down if I see him, you know. But they'll cross the roads and they're just not real fast. They have a whistle. They will sit up. They have an alarm system and they'll have many times one of them is on the lookout.
Bob, did you ever hear Catherine Turner's story about the marmot when she was parked here at the museum? Catherine Turner, who did the crane painting down there, she used to work in our education department part-time before she started doing her art full-time. And she left work one day and went to the lower parking lot where her car was parked, and she saw a marmot run under her car and jump up like in the undercarriage like cats will sometimes do. And she couldn't get it to get out, and she went back to security, and I can't
remember now.
one of the security guards went out with her with a broom and they were poking up underneath her car to try to get it out of there. I have never heard of one
Yeah.
jumping up under a car before, but
Yeah.
this one did.
My mom had one stuck in her wheel well one time.
Oh, really?
And she took it like multiple places and like they sprayed it with like a high pressure thing and it wouldn't get out. You could just see its little face in there. And then eventually it would run out. I can't even remember how they got it out.
Did they feel
It was
safe
in there
like
for
tucked
2
into
days.
a little niche? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, so they do that sometimes, so watch out if you're ever parked in that parking lot out there.
You're fortunate. I live right on Flat Creek, and then I have wilderness area right behind the house, you know, in the mountain that goes up and so on. But we're fortunate almost everywhere. We're surrounded by wildlife. We're really visitors in this valley. You know, we're guests. You know, really. You know, this is their home. I look at it that way anyway. You know, you can't do that in the middle of LA, but you can here. And it's very special to have that. If you are parked in our parking lot and you leave your windows down, say in the summertime or that type of thing, that's not advisable. You know, ravens can do a real good job very quickly. You know, inside of an open vehicle, you know, with windows down or something. And they'll make you busy for a few weeks afterwards, cleaning that vehicle up. Want to come this way? Nice modern piece that gives a sense of motion, I think, definitely. You know. Lindsay Scott and the Yellowstone Falls. Now you saw a sculpture a little while ago. This is Mr. Kestrel. You saw the marble, and you seen how he used the marble as a base. See how he used the stone as a base. And Kestrel likes to, if he can get a chance. This is the natural rock, right here, the boulder. And again, he saw that sculpture before he started it, just looking at the boulder. And you've got a few things. This is natural material. You can have fault lines, you can have pockets, you can have things within the stone. So those are, but again, been a beautiful base. But I would, when you have a visitor, I would have them really examine the natural. This, he did not, he cleaned it, but he left it in its natural state.
Is that the granite?
And then he placed it. When you want to find out river stone,
Okay.
say, he'll give you it's granite or sandstone, river stone. It's a much harder.
Okay, what exactly is
than
Riverstone?
sandstone. What's that?
What exactly is Riverstone? I don't
Close
know.
to granite,
Okay.
similar, but you noticed it's not one, you notice all the difference? Sometimes rock isn't all the same element. There's multiple. A good geologist would give you a 15-minute presentation of how many different types.
Yeah.
The lobby, when I'm in the lobby, I spend a few moments sharing the lobby with guests. And I've been doing it for a number of years before the totem pole was up. We had a steel rod up. And I like to do some humor. And that steel rod, there was a number of very abstract expressionist sculptures and so on like that. I was presenting the steel rod before we got the totem pole. And I make up a different name each time, you know, because I didn't want to use an actual artist, you know. But, and I would give a presentation of the steel rod, and then I'd leave. And about 5 minutes later, somebody in the room would go, "Oh, no, really?" You know, they would think about what I was saying. I point out the floor and the footprints. And if they came down the stairs, did you notice the footprints? To get them natural in observation. Did you recognize the sculpture when you came into the entrance of the museum? What animal was it? How many animals are up there at the entrance under the portraiture? Ask them that. And you'll have somebody in the group that will observe a lot more than the rest of them did. Some of them didn't see any sculpture at all. Did you see the sculpture as you came down the stairs? Did you see the sculpture on the mezzanine? And I don't do that to embarrass them because I won't put them on the spot and pin at one person. But I want them to start using that observation skills, looking at things, recognizing things. This is a museum, and it's a world-class museum with world-class art. This is not a tourist trap. This is a world-class museum.
Tell us about the floor, yeah.
Yeah, the floor, the footprints, and it's natural, and some of the natural inundations there. The footprints are sandblasted in, of course. I do silly things again. We put alfalfa before we completed the museum. The entrances were not blocked at the time, and we let all the wildlife come through, and they left the footprints. You know, I do silly things like that. And then I go right on to something else and don't explain it until they start to, you're kids, aren't you?
So
No,
naughty.
I'm not sure. We had to clean all the scat out of here before we opened the museum. And some people, what's scat? Which is fun because I'll let one visitor share what a scat is with the other visitors.
What is the stone?
Then, what's that?
What is this
Sandstone. So it is, you can really work with that.
Of course, the floors are getting
And
redone.
it's
I don't know if
false.
it's going to change. I
What's
hope
that?
they leave footprints when they change the floors.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
That decision, I heard, is not.
Not
complete
made yet. Mm-hmm.
We've got, when you look at these lights, what do you see? I might add, the lichen on the lights are live. Because we have humidity leveled in the building. So that keeps it alive. What do you see with the lights? Use your imagination.
A river.
A river. Anything else? A fall. A canyon. Lightning bolt. A rhino horn.
Animal trail.
Animal trail. I was given a group was about this size of visitors. And one child was in the group, was his parents, grandparents. And he was 5 years old. And he raised his hand and they were all giving opinions. And he says, I know what it is. It's Hansel and Gretel. The old lady and her finger.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh.
Now, I say that story to visitors for one reason. Art is about what? Creativity and imagination. And what great imagination did that young guy have? He was reading, he read a story, and it was still with him. And he applied it to something else. So when you got all those visitors, and some of them have been married for 30, 40, 50 years, or they've known each other and so on, they can look at that painting and both will see something different.
I just happened to notice, like, their walls,
Yes,
are going straight to the restaurant.
they're not stupid. That when you look at the black bear, you will not see any black in the black bear. You'll see grays, purples, blues, all different tones. And it's beautiful colors, fall colors. Carl Rungus, he came from the southern part of the state. He stopped at there was a little town by the railroad station. He was there for 2 days before he started to come here. But he knew he was in something totally different. He was born, raised, educated in Germany, came to the United States, spent a year with his physician uncle. They went hunting in Maine. He didn't get to hunt in Germany because all land at that time was owned by nobility or the upper classes, and you could be put to death if you shot one of their animals or went to hunting or even walking into the woods. So it was serious stuff. Came here and had all this freedom, this open land and so on. Came here a year later, invited not by a dude ranch, but a rancher that is just about 60 miles south of here, north of Pinedale. And he stayed and came back for about 10 years and went into the Wind Range and did things. When he came up, he saw thousands of skulls. He was on horseback and wagon. Took about almost 3 days to come up to Socorro. But he looked at this, saw thousands. So over 30 years later, by the New York Zoological Society, he was commissioned to do a painting of bison. He was doing different paintings of endangered animals. And he placed them with the Wyoming range. That's in the background. Behind you would be the Wind River Range, if you were looking at it in this location, driving south. He didn't do cute, but there's something very special. There's an animal in this painting looking at you. Can you see it? Only one.
Little calf.
A little calf. You notice the light color of that little calf. And there's other small calves there, but that one is looking right at us. Then he's got this animal here. He doesn't have a narrative with the painting, except he did explain he saw all those skulls. I think he's telling us the past, not the past here, and the future. Knowing, because he saw thousands of skulls, and the animal was totally gone. And when he placed the bison in this, the ranchers that he was staying with, south of here, said, "What did you put bison there? There's no bison there. They don't live here. This is cattle country." And he explained his experience years before, decades before, when he saw all those skulls and those skeletons when he came up from the south. Rungus is fun to get your visitor to look close to these paintings and look at it. This is pure abstraction right here, the sagebrush. Sagebrush is very difficult. I've watched Ken Carlson and Bob Coons sit in this very bench looking at the sagebrush of this painting and the paintings that, with the other one when we had the wolf painting here, and argue about how he did it. Because it's so difficult to do. It's difficult to photograph too, I might add. But you get back and that comes alive. You get up close and you see abstraction. And it's fun. And then get your visitors to get back, give it angles, give it views and so on, and give it distance. And with Rungus, when you give it angles and you give it distance, that painting all of a sudden has detail. When you're up close, it doesn't. But when you get back, it gives you that. We have a special lady featured in our lobby. Anna Hyatt Huntington. These two cats, they're life-size. This woman was doing sculpture when women could be arrested for wearing pants. She was doing sculpture that when women then, at those years, at the early part of our last century, were not recognized for being creative, being writers or being authors. They had many times would have to use a male name in order to be published or to be recognized. But she had parents who were very nurturing and very supportive. And that helped tremendously.
Is she Wyoming, from Wyoming?
No, no. These for a while were, you can see the green tint. It was exposed to sea oil, sea air for a while. Brook Green Gardens in South Carolina.
These, so there are casts of these at Brook Green Gardens.
Yes.
These were in Iowa, outside, on top of
Outside.
two gate posts.
Yeah, I saw Brook Green Gardens.
Yeah.
yesterday.
You know where else these are?
Where?
At the Met.
Yes.
So there's casts of these at the Met as well.
But you get that exposure to patina. Does change when it gets exposed to the natural elements.
Where in Iowa, you know?
They were in the, I think it was like the governor's mansion or something. Or someone who had been governor in his mansion.
Notice the two cats coming down the stairs?
I love those two cats.
Cheetahs?
Pumas.
Pumas.
Yes.
I can just be the corrector.
This time of the year, Tucker Smith is a joy to share with visitors. Because they can go right out on the terrace and look at this image that you're looking at here. Now, he painted this from the ground, from the road. We had two trees here, one fell down, so there's a little bit of detail there. And you got Miller Butte right here. Right now on the other side of Miller Butte, and sometimes on top, you'll have some big orange sheep.
Oh, I was there the other day on the water.
Take that road past the hospital.
Like in the cars.
But this is pretty much the way you see it. The artist is using his skills to influence the way you look at it just a bit. He doesn't want you to focus up here, he wants you to look up and then come down. So he takes away the top of the image of the sleep in India and brings it down. And this is the way it is this morning, not as much as it was last week when we were very cold. When the sun first came up, see the mist coming up from the creek. And these animals have been taken, they didn't play too long during rut season. They're very healthy looking. And if he played too long and he wasn't eating, then he comes into the winter lower in weight. He's not gonna survive. And you'll see, usually early in winter, we see a number of animals down out there. Usually they're bulls. And they didn't get their body weight up high enough to sustain during this weather.
Well, it's about 10 after 11, Bob.
Okay.
Do you want to do a couple more minutes and
Yeah, a
then
couple
we'll switch
more
gears?
minutes.
Okay.
Ken Carlson. He's got a wolf that's similar to this. This is an example of an artist that goes through anxiety. When he did the wolf, he's noted for taking the wildlife and placing them in the natural habitat with trees, streams, mountains, valleys, that type of thing. He was successful. He already had a couple of books under his name. Ken Carlson wanted to do an animal with an abstract background, and he wanted to show it like it was coming out of the painting. This is very similar to the wolf painting that we'll have up from time to time. Notice the colors again, the images, and it's a good painting to take a look at. But he wants to give you that feeling of this animal really alive and vigorous. When you look at the Bateman with the big bison, and it's just in the other room, it's very similar, except for he uses a cloud of dust to give that illusion of bringing that animal back out again. And so Ken Carlson is a mature painter. So when you get up close, he doesn't paint every hair. It gives you the illusion of doing that. All these different shadows and everything. The strokes are rather bold and they're large. And the colors are all very, very adaptable and plain. And you give this, you get up close and look at the workmanship, and then you get back. And you can't get way back on this painting, but you give that real distance, and the more distance you give it, the more detail you see, and the more alive it becomes. And then you get up close and look at it. And it's fun to watch your visitor. You give a tour, this is a joy to do. And I'll talk to them about giving angles. And then, towards the end of the tour, I'll let them on their own, and I'll leave. And I'll come back 20 or 30 minutes later, and they're doing that in different galleries with different artwork. And it's a joy to watch that, because they're really looking at the paintings. giving it those perspectives and giving those angles and giving the distance and going up and looking at the workmanship. And if they have a little bit of background from an education standpoint, or working with oils or so on, or with acrylic or with another medium, then they'll just have much more of an appreciation of the artist they're looking at. When you go into the galleries, we got a couple of Thomas Morans on the right side. It's important, and it's written also, he does note it in there. He's got a Thomas Moran on one side and Thomas Moran on the other. The importance of the artists that are featured in this museum. Moran is a perfect example. I don't think we'd be talking about national parks, and particularly not Yellowstone National Park, if it wasn't for that artist. The debate they had in Congress at that time to protect the land and set it aside were the same debates we have today. If you can't dig it up, and you can't mine it, and you can't get the resources out of it, what good is it? Very same ones. And when they saw his paintings with Henry Jackson's black and white photographs, then they decided to protect the land. Because then those thermal activities he did, they were large watercolors along with the black and white. And they barely passed it. And then we had, do you remember who the president was that signed it? Ulysses Grant. I don't think it would pass today, and I don't think it would be signed if it did.
The government shut down.